In a town divided by prejudice, David and Claire Henry's decision to adopt a black child named Jeremiah ignites ridicule and mockery. But as a devastating disaster strikes, this unconventional family becomes the heart of a community's transformation. How can an act of love that once drew hatred become the key to uniting a divided community in its darkest hour? If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey. David and Claire Henry were just like any other middle-class couple, dreaming of starting a family. But life had other plans. After years of trying to conceive, they faced the heartbreaking reality that they couldn't have children of their own. It was a tough pill to swallow, but it led them down an unexpected path. That's when they decided to adopt. Their hearts were set on giving a loving home to a child in need. Enter Jeremiah, a young black boy whose parents had tragically passed away due to lack of medical care. The Henrys saw beyond color, seeing only a child who needed love and stability. Little did they know, their decision would stir up a hornet's nest in their community. The initial reaction was, well, let's just say it wasn't the warm welcome they had hoped for, but how bad could it really get? And more importantly, how would this family's love story change everything? The Henrys braced themselves for some disapproval, but nothing could have prepared them for what came next. As they brought Jeremiah home, whispers turned to shouts, and friendly faces morphed into masks of judgment. What shocking response awaited this new family, and how would it test the limits of their resolve? David and Claire's decision to adopt Jeremiah sent shockwaves through their community. The backlash was swift and severe, with neighbors they once considered friends now looking at them with open disdain. One parent approached David in the grocery store, voicing concerns about the challenges of raising a black child in their predominantly white town. "Have you really thought this through?" they asked, their tone laced with judgment. "This isn't exactly the place for someone like him." The criticism wasn't limited to strangers. Even family members expressed their apprehensions, suggesting that David and Claire weren't thinking clearly. "We're just worried about how people will react," one relative confided, their words stinging with disapproval. The Henrys found themselves suddenly isolated, their once warm community now cold and unwelcoming. Claire felt a mix of vulnerability and determination as she faced the daily barrage of disapproving glances and whispered comments. She'd catch snippets of conversations at the supermarket or the park, always falling silent when she approached. The weight of judgment pressed down on her, but it also ignited a fierce protectiveness for Jeremiah. David's emotional turmoil was palpable as he navigated the disapproval from colleagues and friends alike. At work, he overheard a coworker questioning his decision, wondering aloud if David was trying to make some kind of statement. The pain of being judged not just as a parent, but as a member of the community, cut deep. Yet, with each criticism, David's resolve only grew stronger. One particularly shocking incident occurred when the Henrys brought Jeremiah to the local playground for the first time. As they approached, parents hurriedly gathered their children, casting wary glances in their direction. One neighbor confronted David directly, their voice carrying across the suddenly quiet park. "You can't seriously think this is appropriate for our town, can you?" The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the prejudices they were up against. Despite the hostility, Claire and David remained steadfast in their commitment to Jeremiah. They viewed their decision not just as an act of love, but as a testament to the power of unconditional acceptance. In quiet moments at home, away from the judgmental eyes of the town, they found strength in the family they were building. The Henrys' determination became a powerful narrative against the backdrop of community prejudice. They focused on creating a loving home for Jeremiah, filling their days with laughter, learning, and the simple joys of family life. Each bedtime story, each shared meal, each small milestone celebrated became an act of defiance against those who doubted them. As days turned into weeks, David and Claire's love for Jeremiah only grew stronger. They began to see beyond the immediate challenges, envisioning a future where their family could help reshape the community's perspective on diversity and acceptance. It wasn't just about raising a child anymore. It was about challenging deeply ingrained biases and paving the way for a more inclusive society. With their vision clear, David and Claire set out to build an unshakable foundation for their family. But how could they shield Jeremiah from the harsh realities of their community's prejudice while still preparing him for the world outside their home? The Henrys knew that creating a loving environment for Jeremiah meant more than just providing a roof over his head. They poured their hearts into making their house a true home, filling it with warmth, laughter, and unconditional acceptance. Every day, they worked tirelessly to ensure Jeremiah felt secure and cherished. Claire dedicated herself to nurturing Jeremiah's curiosity and creativity. She filled their home with books featuring diverse characters and stories, encouraging him to explore different cultures and perspectives. David, meanwhile, focused on building Jeremiah's confidence and resilience. He taught him to stand tall in the face of adversity, emphasizing the importance of self-respect and kindness. But the challenges they faced were not confined to their four walls. Simple outings like grocery shopping or visits to the park became exercises in emotional fortitude. David and Claire had to navigate the stares, whispers, and occasional outright hostility from members of their community. One particularly difficult moment came during Jeremiah's first day of school. As they walked him to the classroom, they could feel the weight of judgmental gazes from other parents. Claire squeezed Jeremiah's hand reassuringly, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she couldn't shield him from every unkind word or look. Despite these obstacles, the Henrys remained committed to their goal of raising Jeremiah with a strong sense of identity and self-worth. They engaged in open, age-appropriate conversations about race and prejudice, always emphasizing that the problem lay with those who judged, not with Jeremiah himself. David took it upon himself to seek out positive role models for Jeremiah. He reached out to successful Black professionals in nearby cities, arranging meetings and mentorship opportunities. These connections not only inspired Jeremiah, but also helped the Henrys build a support network beyond their immediate community. As time passed, the family's bond grew stronger in the face of adversity. What had started as a decision to adopt a child in need had evolved into a profound journey of personal growth and redefined purpose for David and Claire. They found themselves becoming fierce advocates for inclusivity and diversity, not just for Jeremiah's sake, but for the betterment of their entire community. The Henrys' home became a sanctuary of love and acceptance, standing in stark contrast to the prejudice that still lingered in their town. They hosted gatherings for families with adopted children, creating a safe space for shared experiences and mutual support. These events slowly began to attract curious neighbors, opening small but significant channels for dialogue and understanding. Claire discovered a newfound passion for education and began volunteering at Jeremiah's school, subtly introducing elements of cultural diversity into the curriculum. Her presence and gentle advocacy started to shift perspectives among both students and faculty. David, once solely focused on his career, now found himself deeply invested in community outreach programs. He initiated a youth mentorship project, pairing children from diverse backgrounds with local professionals. The program's success began to challenge long-held stereotypes and prejudices within the town. As Jeremiah grew, so did the Henrys' understanding of the complexities of race and identity. They learned to listen more than they spoke, to acknowledge their own biases and work on them, and to celebrate the unique strengths that came from their diverse family unit. The journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were moments of doubt, tears shed in private, and heated discussions about how best to protect Jeremiah while also preparing him for the world. But with each challenge, the Henrys emerged stronger. Their their resolve deepened by the love they shared. Their experience as parents reshaped their identities in profound ways. Claire, once defined primarily by her career, now saw herself as a fierce protector and advocate for equality. David, who had always prided himself on his rationality, discovered wells of empathy and emotional strength he never knew he possessed. As Jeremiah grew from a toddler to a young boy, David and Claire's journey as parents took on new dimensions. The challenges they faced evolved, forcing them to confront not only their community's prejudices, but also their own limitations as parents. How would they navigate the complexities of raising a child of a different race in a town still grappling with its biases? The Henrys soon realized that their love alone wasn't enough to shield Jeremiah from the harsh realities of the world. As he started school, they noticed subtle changes in his behavior. Jeremiah began asking questions about why he looked different from his classmates, why some kids wouldn't play with him, and why adults sometimes stared at their family in public. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at school, Jeremiah came home in tears. A classmate had used a racial slur, leaving him confused and hurt. David and Claire found themselves at a crossroads, realizing they needed to have conversations they weren't fully prepared for. They had to confront their own discomfort and lack of experience in discussing race and identity. Claire took the lead, researching and reaching out to support groups for transracial adoptive families. She learned about the importance of acknowledging Jeremiah's racial identity and helping him develop a positive self-image. David, initially hesitant to address these issues, found himself pushed out of his comfort zone. He started attending workshops on racial awareness and bias, determined to be the father Jeremiah needed. As Jeremiah entered his pre-teen years, new challenges emerged. He began to notice the differences in how he was treated compared to his peers. The Henrys had to navigate difficult conversations about racial profiling, stereotypes, and systemic inequalities. They struggled to find the right balance between preparing Jeremiah for these realities and preserving his innocence. The emotional toll of prejudice became evident when Jeremiah faced bullying at school. David and Claire found themselves in the principal's office, advocating for their son and pushing for more inclusive policies. They realized that their role as parents extended beyond their home, requiring them to be active voices for change in their community. As time passed, the Henrys' determination to raise Jeremiah as their own, despite the challenges, began to have an unexpected impact on their community. Neighbors who had once shunned them started to take notice of the loving, well-adjusted child Jeremiah was becoming. Some even approached the family, curious about their experiences and eager to learn. David and Claire's growth as parents was reflected in their ability to adapt their parenting strategies. They learned to listen more than they spoke, to acknowledge their own biases, and to celebrate the unique strengths that came from their diverse family unit. Their home became a safe space for open discussions about race, identity, and social justice. Years flew by, and before they knew it, Jeremiah was graduating high school. As he stood on the stage, accepting his diploma, David and Claire felt a mix of pride and apprehension. They had done their best to prepare him for the world, but would it be enough? Their fears were put to rest when Jeremiah announced his decision to become a firefighter. He explained that growing up in a family that faced adversity had instilled in him a deep desire to help others in need. David and Claire realized that their journey had not only transformed them, but had also shaped Jeremiah into a compassionate and courageous young man. Jeremiah's choice of profession became a turning point for the community. As he donned his firefighter uniform and began serving the town that had once rejected him, perceptions started to shift. People who had harbored prejudices found themselves reassessing their views in the face of Jeremiah's dedication and bravery. The Henry story of love, resilience, and growth began to inspire others in unexpected ways. Families considering adoption reached out to them for guidance. Community leaders sought their input on initiatives to promote diversity and inclusion. Slowly but surely, the town that had once been divided by prejudice was learning to embrace differences and celebrate diversity. Jeremiah's decision to become a firefighter marked a new chapter in the Henry story. As he donned his uniform for the first time, a mix of pride and apprehension filled his parents' hearts. Would the community that had once shunned their family now accept Jeremiah as a protector? The early days of Jeremiah's career were far from easy. He faced subtle resistance from some colleagues and skepticism from certain members of the public. But Jeremiah's unwavering dedication and natural aptitude for the job slowly began to chip away at these barriers. One scorching summer afternoon, Jeremiah responded to a house fire in a neighborhood that had once been particularly hostile to his family. As he rushed into the burning building, he heard cries coming from the second floor. Without hesitation, Jeremiah climbed through the smoke-filled hallway, located an elderly woman, and carried her to safety. The woman, recognizing Jeremiah as he removed his mask, tearfully thanked him, her previous prejudices melting away in the face of his bravery. Incidents like these started to accumulate. Jeremiah's quick thinking during a multi-car pileup on the highway saved several lives. His calm demeanor while rescuing a group of children trapped in an elevator during a power outage earned him commendations from grateful parents. Each act of heroism not only showcased Jeremiah's skills, but also challenged long-held biases in the community. As Jeremiah's reputation grew, so did the respect he commanded within the fire department. His innovative ideas for improving response times and enhancing community outreach programs caught the attention of his superiors. Within a few years, Jeremiah found himself promoted to lieutenant and eventually to the position of division chief. The significance of Jeremiah's rise through the ranks wasn't lost on the town. Many who had once whispered disapproval now spoke openly about the positive changes they were witnessing. The fire department, under Jeremiah's leadership, became a model of inclusivity and excellence. One day, as Jeremiah was conducting a fire safety seminar at the locale elementary school, he noticed a shift in the audience's demeanor. Parents who had once avoided eye contact now engaged him in conversation, asking thoughtful questions about home safety. Children of all backgrounds looked up to him with admiration, seeing not the color of his skin, but the heroism of his actions. The town's annual community picnic, once an event marked by subtle segregation, began to change. Jeremiah's presence, along with his fellow firefighters, seemed to break down invisible barriers. Families that had never interacted before found themselves sharing tables, swapping stories, and discovering common ground. As summer approached, an unusual heat wave settled over the region. Jeremiah found himself increasingly concerned about the dry conditions and the potential for wildfires. He initiated a public awareness campaign, educating residents about fire prevention and emergency preparedness. During a town council meeting, Jeremiah presented a proposal for updated firefighting equipment and increased personnel training. As he spoke, he noticed something different in the room. The skepticism that had once greeted his ideas was replaced by attentive nods and thoughtful questions. Even those who had been his harshest critics seemed to be listening with newfound respect. As Jeremiah wrapped up his presentation, an older council member, known for his conservative views, stood up. "I have to admit," he began, his voice slightly shaky, "I had my doubts about you, son. But seeing what you've done for this town, how you've brought us together, well, I was wrong. And I'm sorry." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into applause. It was a small moment, but it signified a larger shift in the community's mindset. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were crumbling, replaced by a growing sense of unity and shared purpose. Cedar Hollow's moment of triumph was short-lived. As temperatures began to soar, a sinister threat emerged on the horizon. Would the community's fragile peace withstand the impending inferno, Or would old prejudices reignite amidst the flames? The summer had started innocently enough, with children playing in sprinklers and families gathering for backyard barbecues. But as July wore on, an oppressive heat settled over Cedar Hollow like a heavy blanket. The once lush lawns turned brown and brittle, and the air shimmered with an unnatural intensity. Jeremiah, now division chief of the fire department, watched the weather reports with growing concern. The prolonged dry spell combined with record-breaking temperatures created perfect conditions for wildfires. He doubled down on his public awareness campaigns, urging residents to clear brush from their properties and be vigilant about potential fire hazards. Despite Jeremiah's warnings, few in Cedar Hollow could have imagined the scale of the disaster that was about to unfold. It began with a small spark, perhaps from a discarded cigarette or a piece of sun-heated glass. Within hours, a wall of flame was racing towards the outskirts of town, devouring everything in its path. As the first reports came in, Jeremiah sprang into action. He coordinated with neighboring fire departments and called in every available firefighter. The scene that greeted them as they approached the fire line was apocalyptic. The sky glowed an angry orange, thick smoke obscuring the sun and turning day into an eerie twilight. Back in town, panic began to spread. The local radio station interrupted its regular programming with urgent evacuation orders. Families scrambled to gather essentials and load up their cars. The main roads out of Cedar Hollow quickly became clogged with traffic. In the midst of the chaos, old divisions began to crumble. Neighbors who had once avoided eye contact now worked side by side, helping elderly residents into vehicles and ensuring no one was left behind. The fire didn't discriminate based on race or social status, and neither did the town's response. At the community center, Claire Henry took charge of setting up an emergency shelter. She organized volunteers, distributed water and snacks, and comforted frightened children. Her years of advocating for inclusivity had prepared her for this moment, as she effortlessly coordinated people from all walks of life. David Henry found himself driving a school bus, ferrying those without transportation to safety. As he navigated the smoke-filled streets, he reflected on how far the town had come. The bus was filled with a diverse group of passengers, all united in their fear and hope for survival. As night fell, the situation grew dire. The fire had outflanked several firefighting units, cutting them off from the main force. Jeremiah received word that a group of his colleagues were trapped, along with several families who'd failed to evacuate in time. Without hesitation, Jeremiah assembled a rescue team. They would have to navigate through active fire zones to reach the stranded group. As they prepared to move out, Jeremiah caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd of onlookers. It was the town council member who had once opposed him, along with several others who had been slow to accept the Henrys. "Be careful out there, son," the council member said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're all counting on you." Jeremiah nodded, the weight of the moment not lost on him. As he climbed into the fire truck, he realized that the very people who had once shunned his family were now looking to him for salvation. The rescue mission was harrowing. Jeremiah and his team battled through walls of flame, choking smoke, and falling debris. They found the trapped firefighters and civilians huddled in a clearing, surrounded by fire on all sides. With skill and determination, Jeremiah led them to safety, earning the gratitude and admiration of those he saved. As dawn broke, the full extent of the disaster became clear. Large swaths of Cedar Hollow had been reduced to ash. Hundreds of homes were lost, and the surrounding forests were charred husks of their former selves. Yet, amidst the devastation, a new spirit of unity had emerged. As smoke cleared and embers cooled, Cedar Hollow faced an uncertain future. But in the charred remains of their town, residents discovered an unlikely source of hope. What transformative role would the Henry family play in the aftermath of devastation? The crisis had stripped away pretenses, leaving only raw humanity in its wake. David, Claire, and Jeremiah, Henry, once outsiders, now found themselves at the heart of Cedar Hollow's struggle for survival. Their years of resilience, in the face of prejudice, had unknowingly prepared them for this moment. Claire's organizational skills, honed through years of advocating for inclusivity, proved invaluable at the emergency shelter. She moved with purpose, assigning tasks and coordinating volunteers with a calm efficiency that inspired confidence in those around her. As she distributed blankets and comfort to shell-shocked families, Claire's genuine empathy crossed all racial and social boundaries. David, who had once felt the sting of disapproving glances, now drove through smoke-filled streets, ferrying residents to safety. His school bus became a symbol of unity, filled with a diverse group of passengers, all sharing the same fear and hope. As he navigated treacherous roads, David's steady presence reassured those on board, his actions speaking louder than words ever could. Jeremiah, the firefighter once viewed with suspicion, emerged as a true hero. His leadership during the rescue operations demonstrated not just bravery, but a deep commitment to the entire community. When he led a team through active fire zones to save trapped families, including some who had once shunned him, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. As the immediate danger passed, the Henrys didn't step back. They remained at the forefront of recovery efforts, working tirelessly alongside their neighbors. Claire organized donation drives, ensuring resources were distributed fairly to all affected families. David used his construction skills to help assess and repair damaged homes, regardless of who owned them. Jeremiah's role expanded beyond firefighting. He became a bridge between the fire department and the community, leading fire safety workshops and coordinating rebuilding efforts. His patient explanations and genuine concern for everyone's well-being began to soften even the hardest hearts. The transformation was subtle at first, a nod of acknowledgement here, a word of thanks there. But as days turned into weeks, the change became more pronounced. People who had once crossed the street to avoid the Henrys now sought them out for advice and assistance. The family's home became an unofficial community center, a place where residents of all backgrounds gathered to plan and support one another. One poignant moment crystallized the shift in Cedar Hollow's collective mindset. During a town hall meeting to discuss rebuilding efforts, an elderly resident stood up. With tears in his eyes, he addressed the room. "I've lived here all my life, and I thought I knew what made this town special. But it took losing everything to see what truly matters. The Henrys have taught us more about community than we ever knew." His words resonated through the packed room, met with murmurs of agreement and a few sniffles. The mayor, visibly moved, turned to the Henry family. "On behalf of Cedar Hollow, I want to thank you, not just for your heroism during the fire, but for your unwavering commitment to this town, even when we didn't deserve it. You've shown us what it truly means to be neighbors." As rebuilding began in earnest, the Henrys' influence continued to grow. Their home became a model for inclusive community planning, with neighbors of all backgrounds coming together to share ideas and resources. Claire's suggestion for a community garden blossomed into a project that brought together residents who had never interacted before, working side by side to cultivate new growth from the ashes. David's expertise in construction made him a natural leader in the rebuilding efforts. He organized volunteer crews that crossed all social and racial lines, fostering a sense of shared purpose and pride in their town. As they worked together, sweating and laughing, old prejudices began to crumble like the charred remains they cleared away. Jeremiah's fire department initiatives expanded, with a focus on community engagement and diversity. He implemented programs that encouraged young people from all backgrounds to consider careers in emergency services, slowly but surely, changing the face of Cedar Hollow's first responders. As Cedar Hollow began to rebuild, the true transformation of the town became evident. The Henry family's unwavering commitment to their community had sparked a change that went far beyond the physical reconstruction of buildings. It was a rebuilding of hearts and minds, challenging long-held prejudices and fostering a new sense of unity. The fire department's new face was just the beginning. Cedar Hollow stood on the precipice of change, but old habits die hard. How would the town's entrenched attitudes fare against the rising tide of inclusivity? In the weeks following the disaster, small but significant shifts in behavior began to emerge. Neighbors who had once avoided eye contact now greeted each other warmly on the street. The local diner, once an unspoken bastion of segregation, now bustled with a diverse mix of patrons sharing tables and conversations. One of the most vocal critics of the Henrys' adoption years ago, Mrs. Thompson, approached Claire at the community center. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I was wrong about you and your family. You've shown us what true community means." This heartfelt apology was just one of many as former detractors found the courage to acknowledge their past mistakes. The town's annual festival, once a rather homogeneous affair, took on a new character. Under Jeremiah's guidance, the event was reimagined to celebrate the diverse cultures within Cedar Hollow. Food stalls offering a variety of cuisines stood alongside traditional fare, while performances showcased talents from all corners of the community. David's construction crews became a model of integration. As they worked side by side to rebuild homes, barriers of race and class seemed to dissolve. Laughter and camaraderie echoed through the streets, replacing the tension that had once hung in the air. The local school board, inspired by the town's newfound spirit of inclusivity, revamped its curriculum. They introduced programs that celebrated diversity and taught the importance of empathy and understanding. Claire was invited to speak at assemblies, sharing her family's story and the lessons they had learned along the way. Even the town's governance began to reflect the changing attitudes. The next local election saw a diverse slate of candidates, with several citing the Henrys' example as their inspiration for running. The town council, once a bastion of old guard thinking, began to more accurately represent the community it served. As the physical scars of the fire began to heal, so too did the emotional wounds of past prejudices. The community center, rebuilt and expanded, became a hub for cross-cultural exchange and education. Programs that promoted understanding and celebrated diversity flourished, drawing participants from all walks of life. Jeremiah's influence extended beyond the fire department. His leadership during the crisis had earned him widespread respect, and he used this platform to advocate for continued growth and change. He initiated a mentorship program that paired young people from diverse backgrounds with community leaders, fostering understanding and breaking down stereotypes. The town's transformation didn't go unnoticed by the outside world. News outlets picked up the story of Cedar Hollow's remarkable journey from division to unity. Visitors began to trickle in, curious to see the town that had risen from the ashes of disaster and prejudice. As Cedar Hollow approached the one-year anniversary of the fire, plans were made for a commemoration ceremony. The event would not only honor those who had been lost and the resilience of the community, but also serve as a commitment to the town's new values of inclusivity and acceptance. On the day of the ceremony, the mayor stood before a crowd that represented every facet of Cedar Hollow's diverse population. In a poignant moment, he turned to the Henry family seated in the front row. "Through their actions," he declared, "David, Claire Henry, and their son Jeremiah have shown us what it truly means to be courageous and compassionate. They've taught us that family isn't defined by blood or color, but by love and commitment." The mayor's voice cracked with emotion as he continued. I would like to extend our deepest regrets on behalf of Willow Creek for the suffering we have caused. Your forgiveness and unwavering dedication to this community have led us to become better versions of ourselves. As the crowd erupted in applause, it was clear that Cedar Hollow had undergone a profound transformation. The town that had once shunned the Henrys now embraced them as the embodiment of its highest ideals. The journey from prejudice to acceptance had been long and sometimes painful, but the result was a community united in its commitment to diversity and inclusion. Cedar Hollow's transformation taught us that love and acceptance can overcome even the deepest prejudices. The Henry family's unwavering commitment to their community showed how small acts of kindness can spark significant change. Their story reminds us that family isn't defined by blood or color, but by love and shared experiences. The town's journey from division to unity proves that when we open our hearts and minds, we can build stronger, more inclusive communities. It challenges us to examine our own biases and consider how we might contribute to positive change in our own neighborhoods. As viewers, we're encouraged to reflect on our attitudes towards difference and diversity. How might we create more welcoming spaces in our own lives? By embracing diversity and challenging societal norms, we can all play a part in building a more compassionate world.